Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. Welcome to a moment of devotional thought with author E. Stanley Jones. We're reading his wonderful book about spiritual growth. And page by page and devotion by devotion, we're getting an idea that spiritual development begins in God, but it passes right through the center of each of us, and each of us has to assume the responsibility of responding to God appropriately. Walking in the light, living by faith, being filled with the Spirit of God. Whatever different way you see it in the scriptures, you are abiding in Christ and you begin to cooperate with the will of God one day at a time. Then we become useful for the purposes of God. And Stanley Jones is talking now about the problem of the herd, or the society that surrounds us, and how the society that surrounds us is the natural element in which we will live our lives. But we cannot be of the world. We can be in the world according to Jesus. And so we have to understand that there is this pressure of this society around us, but we are not against that society. We are in that society to move that society every day in a direction with their encounter with the way, the truth, and the life, which is Jesus Christ. We are in that society as salt and light. So he wants to make sure that we understand that we have to love something more than we love the society around us, because loving that something or someone more than the society allows us to pull that society up to a higher level where love is not such an exceptional thing, but becomes a part of the life of a society. So here's the title of his devotional for today: Loving Something More Than the Herd. Loving something more than the herd. Here's how he expresses it. I think he expresses it beautifully. I enjoyed this morning tremendously. He said this: we saw yesterday the dilemma. If we belong to the herd, we are stunted. If we are not members of the herd, we are frustrated. What is the way out? The way out with the herd is the way out for the individual. The herd must be deliberately and decisively surrendered to God. You no longer belong to it. You belong to God. The tyranny of the herd is broken. You are emancipated from it by a higher loyalty. But now that the power of the herd over you is broken, you can be a member of the herd, an emancipated member. Inwardly, you are free. Free to be a member of the herd because you do not belong to it. You are in it, but not of it. You can be loyal to the herd as long as loyalty to the herd is consistent with loyalty to God, your supreme loyalty. When it is not consistent, you break with the herd. You break with it on one level, hoping that you will thereby meet it, that society, on a higher level. The break is not for the sake of a break, but for the sake of meeting on a higher level. You hope that by your break, you will call attention to the evil with which you are compelled to break, and that the herd thereby will renounce it and meet you on a higher level. If it doesn't, then you are on a higher level awaiting to step up from the herd, of the herd. The break is not for the sake of a break, but for the sake of higher fellowship. This makes a clean break instead of an infected one, infected with cantankerousness, resentments, or self-pity. You can now love the herd, since you love something or someone more than the herd. The herd is no longer God. You are no longer afraid of it. Now you can love it with a love that is not corroded with fear. The supreme example of identification with the herd, and yet with an inner isolation from the herd, is Jesus. He identified himself with men so deeply that their sorrows became his sorrows, their sins his sins, at a cross. And yet he did not belong to the herd. He belonged to the Father. With that supreme allegiance intact, he could go into the herd emancipated. And here is the prayer that he prays at the end of this devotional. O Father, since I belong supremely to you now, send my emancipated soul deeply into the herd to lift it. Amen. And the affirmation for the day: the herd shall feel my life, but it shall not determine my life. This is a beautiful statement. The herd, the society around me, of which I am a present participant, shall feel my life, the quality of my life and my love, but it shall not determine my life. It's one of the most simple and beautiful statements of what it means to be in the world, but not of the world. If you want to see the example of that, as you just read the Gospels, and you will see Jesus loving the society around him, but he continuously was full of grace toward that society, but he would not sacrifice the truth. But he would not sacrifice the society around him as if it had no value. He actually was moving them toward a reunion with his Father, because he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father. I think this devotional really speaks for itself. Anybody who could read this one or two or three times, I'm sure you'll find many things that you can illustrate in your own life about how this would impact your behavior. And that's great. I've had a few experiences with the herd in my lifetime. I have been caught up, and one time I was in the middle of the city of Sao Paulo many, many years ago in the 1980s, and an anti-American demonstration broke out in the middle of Sao Paulo. And I'm pretty obviously a little bit looked like most of the average American from back in that day anyway. And man, I got caught up in that crowd, and it was surging, and I thought, I've got to get out of this crowd. And I finally found a store in which I could shelter myself, and the thing passed by. I had a couple times at huge events in stadiums. One time in Miami, I got caught up at a football game, and people panicked, and they didn't have the exit set up to handle it all. And I thought that was going to be where I would end my life, right there in the middle of that panic of that crowd. Crowds, herds, they panic. They express bitterness in a collective way. They get filled with self-pity, and sometimes they're full of fear. And all of these things are not strategies for life. My friend Joe Shirk is watching this video right now. I saw that just came online, and his father taught me to scuba dive many, many, many years ago. And I'm a real panicky sort of person, and I don't really like closed-in things, so diving is a little bit of an experience. And he taught me to dive. And I remember he told me that your greatest fear or your greatest challenges are not sharks or the process of diving. He said it's panic. It's panic. He said if you panic, that's what kills most divers. I never forgot that. Well, crowds get sick with panic, with bitterness, with self-pity, and fear. And once these kinds of strategies for life, panic is a strategy, bitterness is a strategy, self-pity is a strategy, fear is a strategy. They're killers. They're killers. And so we are in the world, but we are not in the world's panic, and we are not in the world's self-pity, and we are not in the world's fear, and we're not. This makes us useful here, because if there are enough calm voices, and if there are enough fearless people who know how to love fearlessly, then the herd can go up in its behavior, not down in its behavior. If you get involved with panic, with bitterness, with self-pity and fear, the thing is going down. If you get involved with love, joy, peace, long-suffering, the fruit of the Spirit, then you lift the environment. And you invite people to come up out of that. You don't ignore the reality, but you as a strategy for life, panic is not a help. Panic is not a help. In any situation that I've ever been in, panic, I never saw it make something better. Bitterness is not a strategy. It is a reaction that will pull you further down into the chaos. Self-pity. Oswald Chambers, one of the favorite authors that I've read over the years, he says that it is the number one sin of a Christian is self-pity. How can we be filled with self-pity when we're supposed to be filled with the grace of God? He said self-pity is incompatible with our mission in our world and our mission in our life and our relationship to God. We have the abundant life already. We're not chasing the abundant life. The abundant life lives in us. You know, I never forgot when Joe Shirk taught me to dive. He said, you know, if you die diving, it'll be because you panicked. I'm sure there's a few exceptions to that, but it was absolutely right. Never forgot that. It's amazing how some things you just don't forget. You just don't forgive. And I hope that we'll all forget this. We are in the world, but we are not of the world. Now that's a hard thought. Okay, how do I live here? Free of panic, free of bitterness, free of self-pity, free of fear, filled with God. Christ formed in you. And then you'll know when to break with the panic, and you won't get in the middle of it. And boy, don't get in the middle of it. Come up out of it so that other people can see that's not the way. It is not the way. But we need this kind of a ability in the world we live in right now, wherever you live. I live in Brazil. We have our problems. We've got an election coming up. It's going to be chaos, maybe, depending on how many people go up and how many people go down. Be one of those people who rises up, not to get away, not to be afraid, but to show people there is another way. There is another way, and that way is Jesus Christ. So it's good to see you this morning. I see that my sister Marie is here and other people. This little exercise of reading the devotions have so many benefits for me, and I hope they are beneficial to you. Well, I'm in the middle of my society here in Brazil. You're in the middle of your society where you are. Take people up. Don't take them down. God bless you.